Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here, getting on a plane for business for the first time in a couple of years. So I'm going to talk, first of all, about challenging assumptions, which is a physical, very low-tech, experiential learning tool, game, activity. I don't really mind what we call these things. So as we would normally do as a company, we always start off with what is the behavior you're trying to change or the skill you're trying to build. And in this case, it was about improving the impact of innovation training in organizations, and very specifically trying to reduce the block to the creative process that's caused by a failure to challenging assumptions, typically at the start of a project. However, it also became clear that a really useful part of this tool is helping people to understand this, that past experience is a really strong driver to current behavior. And it's absolutely fundamental to how adults learn or indeed unlearn something. So our objectives were, let's create a physical activity, because that's tended to be the space that we've played in, that could be used as an engaging and memorable way to experience this power of conscious or unconscious assumptions. And also we want to make it predictable and simple to facilitate, because we know you guys don't have a lot of time to learn new tools and tricks, so we want it easy to set up and use. So when we sat down and thought about this from the design process point of view, we thought, how do we actually observe this behavior? As a facilitator or a trainer, how do you know when learners are challenging the assumptions, and how do you actually observe it? So we started to look around at some lateral thinking puzzles, some familiar games, activities, and eventually we settled on the jigsaw as a paradigm. And I've had the chance to use this all around the world, and it's fascinating to see everyone has an understanding of what a jigsaw paradigm is. So here's a very early photograph of a prototyping session. There's been a lot of talk about fun in learning. I'm not sure this guy's having fun, but he certainly seems to be engaged. So we thought we were maybe onto something in the early stages. We have to move forward. So what is the actual product? Well, here is one of the versions there. It's simply 22 laser cut wooden pieces. And it's got a solid colour on one side and just unfinished on the other. And unlike most jigsaws, we don't provide a pattern to people, but what we ask you to do as facilitators, and the briefing instructions are relatively simple, and we want it to be small groups, maybe 1 to 4 people, is if I tip all these pieces onto the table, using them all, can you complete the puzzle? Can you put them all together? And no more than that. So I want you to imagine that I've done this, okay? This happens to be a blue one. I've tipped these onto the table. I want you to think about, just for a few seconds, how would you approach that? What would you actually do with those pieces? So most people, when you observe it, start to move them out and start to figure out there's some puzzle pieces that look very much like traditional jigsaw pieces, but others that don't. And if you think that that's a reasonable process to take, then you'd be in line with almost all learners that we've watched engage with this puzzle. However, that won't lead you to a solution. The solution actually is to recognize that some of these puzzle pieces don't go painted side up. So if we observe that behavior at the start, I know what you've done. I know you've made an assumption, and that assumption is based on memory. So the learning outcomes in this are relatively simple, and I'm sure you'll get them. The first step is to recognize existing patterns of thinking. So if it's unconscious and you can't recognize them, how can you change that behavior? Also, existing patterns of inform our thinking as we move into new situations. So if you have this paradigm that the big puzzle pieces are painted side up, then that won't help you get to the end. And if you want to see the puzzle, come over and talk to me later, and I'll explain about that. And of course, some assumptions can be helpful, but negative ones really can block progress. So in terms of results, we always look to our customers for our results, because if no one buys them, then it's clearly not a very good product. So for us as a small business, 6,000 puzzles sold in 5 years and sold across 50 countries makes it a good product for us. And so far, the facilitator guide, which tells you a little bit more about how to set up and maybe how to use it, has been translated into a few languages. But I want to leave you just with this, and I realize not everyone will be able to see it. But I like this quote, and you'll find these on the website. Every single time, participants are amazed by the realization and the implications of a set of often unconscious assumptions that can turn into limiting beliefs. And that's what challenging assumptions should do. Thank you.